welcome, brothers. It's really good to have you with us for week 6 of our Choosing Presence workshop. Let's all take a couple deep breaths here together. Helps me get settled into the space here with y'all, and we probably will have a couple more guys join us as time goes on. Of course, it's also a holiday week, so we might be a little bit smaller group this evening. We'll see what happens. So we're really glad to have you this evening for chapter 6, week 6 of our workshop, Resistance, our main obstacle to true peace. So I think we're going to start out. Chester, maybe you want to have a note here to mention before we open with a poem.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that Mark Mulos contacted us this week and told us that he cannot continue on with participating in the practice here. He's practicing self-care, so he's got to tend to some personal issues. So just wanted to thank Mark for his contribution to date. He's been instrumental in moving things forward to where they are today. So just want to let everybody know that.
Thanks.
So I wanted to start with a poem, as we always do. And this one actually is from Shalon Harkin again. And she just came out with a new book called Wild Grace. It just dropped this week. And I was reading it this morning, and it really fit what we're talking about today. So I wanted to read that to you. So the name of the poem is Awakening is Messy. So Awakening is Messy. So you don't transcend into some paradisical E-list inner garden. It doesn't perfect you. You first come into all reasons you so wanted to stay asleep. And there are many good reasons. To awaken really is to begin to feel. Awakening is bit by bit coming out of denial around all the reasons you needed to wield, that terrible two of othering, because so much is unbearable inside of our own self. It is diving into the cracks in our hearts rather than mortaring them. It does not look like being perfectly empowered, seamlessly composed. It's not to commit with all your heart, or it's to commit with all your heart to no longer take out your helplessness on anyone else. Awakening has nothing to do with stern stoic spirituality. It has nothing to do with finally being aloof enough to not be impacted by the gifts of your feelings. Awakening doesn't come from spiritual mastery, defined as overcoming enough of our shortcomings. It is found in doing our fumbling best to grow into arms strong and loving enough to hold and hug our aching humanity. The myth that awakening looks anything like spiritual perfectionism is perhaps the best sleeping pill. Awakening is at times compassless and often inglorious, inner odyssey toward the rough ruby of all that is bruised and true in our hearts. Awakening isn't only for special people. We're all on our way toward coming out of the sleep cycle.
Thank you, Chester. And brothers, author of Choosing Presence, Jim Heaney, is with us here again this evening. And I'm going to invite Jim if he has any comments about that poem or anything that you want to highlight about that poem, Jim.
I think what awakening means to me through practicing presence is that, number one, it absolutely humbles you. And it humbles you because as we do become still, there is that clear before and after that we absolutely know. We cannot have union with it unless we bring in stillness with the right intention. And awakening to me means it gives us the power to be naked to our brothers and sisters, meaning we can face our fears, we can face our guilt, we can face our shame, because we know we're all in this together and God forgives all of us. That power is the greatest gift God has given me through practicing presence. being able to face my inner fears, my inner conflicts without guilt and shame.
Thank you, Jim. And brothers, now we're going to open up our council with some dedications. So if anybody, we'll take 2 or 3 dedications for our council this evening. So if you had a dedication, feel free to share with us now. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Actually, I'd like to dedicate this to, I've got my good friend Bob. He went in for knee replacement surgery, and which expected to be like an 1.5 hour operation, and they ended up spending 7 hours on it, and had to actually do a bone graft with a cadaver bone, and just dedicating this to him and his recovery.
Yeah. Peace.
Dedicate this council to my friend Ben Williams, who passed away very suddenly of a heart attack a couple of weeks ago. I just found out about it. Someone I knew quite well back when I was in college, and he was actually a mentor to me and a real illuminator, if I may say so, and really helped me at a time in my life in my early 20s when I was really struggling, and I lost touch with him. But I really felt it, and he was a good man.
Yeah.
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 I'd like to dedicate this council to Mark and at least one other man that I know of that couldn't be here with us this evening. Both of the men are dealing with some fatigue and some exhaustion, dealing with some stuff in their lives. So I want to dedicate this to all the men that can't be with us this evening.
Yeah.
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 Here.
All right, brothers, thank you for your dedications. And we bring in all those dedications too unspoken into our circle here this evening. And now's the time for a few more introductions. We're slowly working through the whole group, and I'm pleased that we have some more men here this evening that have yet to introduce themselves. So if you'd like to just, I'll call on you and you tell us again where you're from and what brought you to the practice of presence, maybe how it's going for you so far. So first, if I might ask Dominic Bensavanga.
Hello, brothers. I am from the New York metro area on Long Island. I've been initiated man since 2016, currently on the Illumin Board of Directors. I don't know, the spirit, I think, brought me here. I think it was just the topic seemed to be right time, right place. I've been struggling a little bit with the busyness of my schedule, which has been more driven by work life than anything else, to make all the meetings, but also just give the practice enough time. But I've been pleased by seeing some changes in the little bit of time that I have given it. So I will say committed. Here.
Here. Thank you, Dominic. Lee Peterson.
Yeah. I live in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and one of the basic things that brought me is about 9 years ago, I went through a divorce, and it really pushed me into finding more of my inner life, who I truly am, and a little bit after that, I encountered Richard Rohr's contemplative teachings, which have really been helpful. And I've been working with presence, but struggling with it. And so this course just seems like
That's
the right thing at the right time. So I'm in.
Here.
Here.
Here. Thank you, Lee. Noah Fleshman.
Yeah, hi. So I live in Massachusetts, actually, on Cape Cod, but I lived for a long time. I grew up in Cincinnati and lived there for a period of time in my adult life, raised my family there. But in any case, so I once heard that in order to become really proficient in anything, you have to put in 10,000 hours, right? So if you want to learn how to play an instrument or whatever it is you want to do, some craft, 10,000 hours, and then you'll kind of get to the point where it's almost innate. And so I've been meditating and trying to work on being present for maybe 8 years or so. And I did a little math at one point, and I think I've got in like 50,000 hours or something like that, or not 50,000, 500 hours. So I've only got 9,500 hours to go before I get any good at it. But in all seriousness, I see all these different practices that I've participated in. I've participated in the New England Illumin, did the men's rites of passage. Have taken some courses with Tara Brach, and some other, just lots of different resources. It's almost like earning a degree. You take a lot of different classes. You find mentors, you find pathways, and so it's almost like putting together a big puzzle or something. And this experience with you guys is an important part of that for me, and it's just another piece of the puzzle. And as again I've said in the past, I see this as a much larger, almost sort of geological kind of thing where things are changing slowly but significantly. Like rapid change for me is almost not sustainable. I need more just so the neural pathways, the ways I learned how to think and look at the world that weren't particularly healthy. It takes time to change those things. And so I'm very grateful to be a part of this. I'm complete.
Here. Let's do one more. Jim Erickson. Unmute yourself, Jim. I'm sorry. There you go.
A novice at the technology. Jim Erickson, I live in Brainerd, Minnesota, central Minnesota. Got involved with Lumen through my friend Dave Tillman a number of years ago. Went through the men's rite of passage this last June at Sandstone, and been living with rumination for many years. And, this class seems to help. I'm still not on task as much as I ought to be, but I'm working on it, and I do find some nuggets of gold that are there for me. I'm excited to be a part of this group, and turned 80 today, so never too late to learn, I guess you might say. With that, I'm in.
Thank you, Jim. Thank all of you brothers who shared with us this evening. And we do know that there's still some more voices and experiences that we want to bring into our circle here, and we'll be with you in the next couple of weeks for sure. So thank you again, brothers. And so now it's time for us to practice presence, and we'll do that with a 10-minute sit using the Practicing Presence app.
We start each day with the practice of presence and bring in stillness. That is our foundation that we return to throughout the day. Practice this exercise in a quiet, comfortable place, if possible, either sitting on the floor or in a chair with your back straight. Aim to work up to 15 to 20 minutes. There are very specific reasons why we practice presence the way we do. Our experience is that it makes access to stillness easier and deeper. We put our hand over our heart because this helps release a calming hormone called oxytocin. We praise God because it humbles us. We are aware that we cannot change ourselves without experiencing God's Spirit within us. Our core intention is always to connect with our vibrant inner life, which is God's spiritual energy. Keep in mind that you may slowly say a sacred word, such as Yahweh or Jesus, on each in-breath, which makes it easier to actually take those long, slow breaths. To begin, sit quietly and put your hand over your heart. Praise God and ask Him what you would like Him to do for you inside. For example, Father, all goodness comes from you. Let your peace flow through me. Take a deep, slow breath in, breathing deeply through your nose. Follow the breath as it fills your lungs up with air. Expand your chest until you cannot take in any more air. Release the breath slowly out through your nose until all the air is expended. The out breath should be longer than the in breath. On the slow out breath, you should soon start to feel stillness and get a taste of your vibrant inner life. It is when you start to become aware of it on some level. Focus on the breath with each slow intake and each slow outtake. Focusing on the breath is essential in the practice of presence. When we are consciously focusing on our breath, we cannot think at the same time. When we are consciously present, there are no worries, anxieties, or stress, no lack of self-esteem, because none of that exists in this present moment. It only happens in our unobserved mind, when we are unconsciously living through memory or anticipation. It is important to continue taking 3 deep conscious breaths once an hour or more throughout the day. This is how the practice of presence teaches us, through the stillness we create and what we experience inside. That vibrant inner life is God's Spirit within us, our inner intelligence. When we start the day this way, it becomes our foundation. We know exactly what we're looking for then and throughout the day. This is the first part of inner conditioning, which is essential. That is what renews us throughout the day. You have completed the morning practice. Now continue taking 3 conscious breaths or more every hour to renew yourself.
Welcome back, brothers. I don't think there's a time where I sit and do a practice where I don't feel more calm, centered, and actually present to the moment. I hope you're feeling that way as well. And I hope that all of you have become familiar with the Practicing Presence app, and that maybe you've been able to work your way up to 15, maybe even 20 minutes a day using it to practice presence. So the topic this week, as we dive into kind of our program here, is resistance. And when we were at our planning meeting this morning, I said to Jim and Chester, I said, this is the real core of the program. I mean, it really is. It's the probably one of the longer chapters, if not the longest chapter in the book. There's a lot that Jim has written and has to say about resistance, because it really is the stumbling block, or maybe the hurdle that we all must cross in our spiritual journey and in our quest to become more present in our lives. Resistance, just invite you to think about that a little bit. For me, resistance obviously was something I thought I was supposed to do in life in some ways, shape, or form, is resist. And I'm finding out on the spiritual journey that it's quite the opposite. But so Jim and I did record some video last week where we talked about Chapter 6, resistance, and we've already posted that video at our website. So I hope you're keeping up with us at ohiolumen.org/presence. You can watch that video. This one's about 28 minutes. And Jim has some great things to say when he talks about resistance and what that looks like, and what are some of the ways that we can overcome resistance in our life. So I do want you to see that. But tonight, instead of showing some of that video as we typically do, we wanted to invite your voices into the circle. So I hope that when I sent the reminder email for our workshop this afternoon, you kind of caught the drift there, is that we're going to invite a few responses to some of those questions that I posed. So the first question that you saw this afternoon in your email is, what is your experience with the morning practice? So we'd like to invite a few men to tell us what their experience of the morning practice is. And I don't know if you're familiar with, I should have mentioned this at the outset, but in the participant window, you can actually raise your hand and let me know that you have something to share with us, and I'll call on you if you want to volunteer. You can also just raise your hand in the window if you have something to say, and we'd love to hear what is your experience of the morning practice. Yeah, Bill Fleming, please. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I have a real hard time with it. I've been trying to get up in the morning a little bit earlier than normal for the purpose of spending this time with myself in the silence. And what I find more often than not is I pretend to myself that I'm doing it, that I'm practicing it, when I stay in bed. And I'm horizontal, I do the breathing, and no surprise, guess what? I go back to sleep. And I know it's not what's intended, but that's the way it has been working for me a good number of times. At other times, I'm a little bit sharper. I get up and I do the practice for maybe 10 minutes or something like that. I feel better for it. But more importantly, I'm realizing that my laziness keeps me in bed, and that's a resistance that I have to get over. Amen.
Here. Thank you, Bill. And let me just add too that I said it was in the participant window. So those of you that are using Zoom on your computer, you might see a reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And in there, you can actually, if you click on the reactions button, one of the choices is raise hand. But again, you can just kind of wave to me in the window and I'll be sure to call on you. So again, we're speaking to what is your experience with the morning practice? Go ahead, Tim. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I got to go through all the mechanics here. With me, it's the consistency of it. And it's not so much resistance, I think, as life. a number of grandchildren. I've got a son who works nights. I oftentimes get up in the morning at 7. I've got to pick him up, and then I'm going to take kids to school between 7:30 and 8, so that I try to get up around 5:30 and get in 20 minutes. And I'd say I'm moderately successful. But I'm also 80 years old, so that there comes times when I'm just beat. I mean, I'm tired. My body just is not functioning right. And I manage to get up just enough time to pick up my son from work, and then I take the kids to school. And then on the weekend, I'm watching, my 2 of my grandkids because my son works nights. So, and I'm not making excuses. It's just, kind of a fact that you've got to accept, and try not to get discouraged when you miss a couple, or they don't go right, or you fall asleep in the middle of it. And, the only thing that wakes you up is when your head hits the desk in front of you. So that, and I'm up to about 20 minutes when I do it. But, and then some days I find that it just takes me a while to get settled and get focused. And then I've got, so many other thoughts racing through my mind about what I've got to get done during the course of the day, the different things I've got to do. So, not making excuses, but this is just kind of the way that it goes. So I'm complete.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. All right. Dominic, please share with us.
I gave some experiences when I was able to introduce myself earlier, and what I'm thinking about now and reflecting on is resistance. It seems like I give myself a set amount of time just for prayer and reflection, and presence has to fit into that. So I'm wondering, it's hard to give up my regular routines of prayer, but I'm just wondering what would happen if I put that aside for a few days and just tried this and gave, because I probably am doing 15-20 minutes of full prayer and reflection and just adding the presence practice into it. So that's what I'm looking at, and say maybe that's okay. Maybe we could do that for a couple of days and see how this works. And then ultimately, can I get to a half an hour for the whole morning reflection, prayer, presence? I'm complete.
Thank you, Dominic. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wake up pretty much without fail every night at around 1:32 in the morning, and I find that my mind really gets going. Sometimes I can dodge that gerbil wheel feeling, but a lot of times if I get up just to go to the bathroom or something, by the time I get my head back on the pillow, I'm already starting to think, and my mind starts to wander. So I get up, go in the next room, just sit, and and I'll meditate for usually it's good 20-30 minutes. That's about how long it takes me to just quiet down. And so that's kind of my main meditation practice. And then during the day, I have the app, Presence app, and I get reminded every hour on the hour from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., I think. And sometimes I'm busy or I'm on a call or something like that. I have to wait, but generally I do try to do it at some point, even if I'm just, again, in traffic. If I'm just sitting at a traffic light or taking a walk with my dog, I'll just take a moment, stop, and just take the 3 deep breaths. I can never remember exactly the questions I'm supposed to be asking myself, but basically, am I present? How do I, am I at peace? If I'm not, how do I get back to that? And it's particularly helpful when I'm out of doors, because I live out on Cape Cod, and there's a lot of beautiful views here. And even just walking on the street in the middle of a rainy day, there's so much beauty to be seen. And so, yeah, it works. But again, you know, as soon as I stop, I mean, it doesn't take but a half a minute before my brain's wandering off in 100 different directions. So I'm always grateful for that 30 seconds or a minute that I can calm myself down during the day. So, you know, and that's okay. There's no judgment. That's how I feel about it anyway, that I'm not failing. It's a practice. And if anybody was perfect at it, practice wouldn't be necessary. So I'm complete.
Thank you, Noah. And brothers, this is really important for us to hear, not just the facilitators, but obviously your brothers too in the workshop, because we all have share a lot of these same experiences as we attempt to practice presence throughout our day, and even with the longer sit, maybe in the morning or the evening. So maybe if one more person wants to share a little bit about what their experience is with the morning practice, if they have that. Go ahead, Michael. You're muted, Mike.
So typically my morning practice, I've been doing a centering prayer practice for a long time, many years. And really, I think this is so complementary to that. I don't know that it's even different in any way of trying to become present, because the intention in centering prayer is to be to allow ourselves to enter into God's presence and be present to his action within. So my practice is I try to sit up straight, and usually I use a little kneeler just to keep my back straight so I hold still. Otherwise I fumble around or I'm always fidgeting. And if I can keep myself still, physically still, it helps still my mind more. And then I just enter into the practice. It's usually a 25-minute sit. And usually it takes about 15 minutes, I can start to calm, I can start to become a little more present. And it's usually at that point where I have an inner resistance of letting go to it. And so then the voice, the emotion or the voices of whatever resistance it is much louder. And I just keep returning to my breath and to the practice. And the irony is, at the end of it, something's different. Get up and something's different, but I can't put my finger on it. It's not like, aha, it's nothing like that. It's just, there's a little more peace, maybe a little more compassion in my heart. And then I start my day. So I'm complete.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you, brothers, for those thoughts and about your morning practice and for sharing that with us. You read in the chapter that one of the tools that Jim developed or found was helpful with resistance was to have the app. Certainly, the practice predates any mobile application or any type of electronic device or whatever. But we found that the app does help overcome some of that resistance. And some of you have been using the app. It sounds like some of you have already had a practice and maybe don't always use the app. I just feel like this might be a good time to say that the app has recently been updated for the Google Play Store. So those of you with Android devices, you can go out and get the updated version of the app. I think we've solved any technical issues there. And the iOS app is always been available. It works extremely well, and we'll be updating that as well here soon. So if there's any questions about using the app, getting the app installed, please do reach out to me. Contact me either at connect@ohioillumin.org or answers@choosingpresence.org. We want to make sure that that's available to you and to help with any resistance you might be experiencing, if that's what you want to do, something you want to use. So our next question that I had sent this afternoon, and I want to invite some more responses. Certainly, we want to hear from men who haven't spoken up yet, but even if you have already and you have something to share, please feel free to do so. The question is, do you notice a clear before and after since beginning the practice? Mike kind of spoke to that a little bit just now, but do you notice a clear before and after since beginning the practice? So if anybody can speak to that, I welcome that.
I guess I would just say sometimes yes, sometimes no. It just depends. But it just depends. Where I'm coming from when I enter the practice, but I think again over time, just years, many hundreds, thousands of hours. For me, that's the process. It's not an immediate thing, but I think if I went back 10 years time, I would say absolutely not. I don't know what you're talking about. But now, after all these years, I definitely see the value of it and I can feel it. My family would tell you that I'm a very different person than I was, 10 years ago. So I'm complete.
Thank you, Noah. Brothers, do you notice a clear before and after? And maybe if it's helpful, you guys can speak to some specifics, or what some of the things that you might have noticed when you practice presence or when you meditate. What is the clear before and after? Clarence, please.
I would say for me, it's a whole feeling of feeling connected, focused. Because I use this as an extension of my current practice. Like I said, I'm a minister, and so I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm listening to gospel music, so that it puts me in a space where I feel the difference. This is an almost like an adjunct to everything else I'm doing, and so, and it may be a different method, but it gets me to that place. Um, I I practice A Course in Miracles, and it's designed to help you be at peace. The whole purpose of it is to help you to feel the peace of God. And you know that passage in the Bible where it talks about peace that passes all understanding. That's where I come to the practice for. I want to feel that peace that passes all understanding. That for me, that's my before and after. Because when I'm in the practice, and I'm including all my other practices too, that I'm feeling centered. That feeling of feeling centered in the will of God, that God and I are somehow aligned in purpose. And so I know what my function is throughout the day, which is to be in that space. And I've added a section to my prayer life that says that I want to show up today as the love that someone else needs. Okay. But I also want love to show up in the form that I needed the most. So I'm trying to stay centered. And I guess bottom line, I'm using the practice to stay centered in the will of God, which is love. I'm complete.
Here. Thank you, Clarence. Bill, did you want to jump in? Bill Fleming? You're muted, Bill.
Right around the time we had our second session, I was very much afraid of an operation that was coming up. I was going to have a third cornea transplant in my right eye. And I was real worried about, well, what happens if it doesn't work this time? And talking to my daughter on the phone, I broke down in tears, and I was real shaken about this, the worry about what could happen. And around the same time-ish, I was starting to get into the practice. And I found shortly after that my fear kind of kind of disappeared. And it may sound weird, but that's kind of what happened within inside of me. But then a couple of weeks after that, I went to the doctor for a pre-op visit. And she said, Bill, I don't see anything wrong with your cornea. If I were you, we wouldn't do a darn thing.
Mm.
So whether we call it coincidence or what has happened to me before the practice and after the practice, over time, this is a little glimpse of one thing that happened to this guy. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. Here. Yeah, brothers, I appreciate Dominic, do you have something to add? I didn't, okay. I appreciate what you guys have been sharing tonight about your experience with the morning practice, and also what you experienced as a clear before and after. You know, I echo a lot of what you guys are saying from my own experience. Something does change. One of the things I always think about is there was a in my high school. I went to a big public high school, and there was a sign hanging in the main hall that said, "The human mind, once stretched to a new idea, never goes back to its original dimension." And you know, again, I don't think this is a mind practice. I think this is a heart and soul practice. But you know, once you begin practicing presence, once you begin practicing prayer and going on the spiritual journey, there really is no turning back. It's, you know, it is a long and slow road, but the change is real over time. So I appreciate that. And again, you know, maybe you can reflect on these questions if you didn't share with us tonight. Maybe these are something that you can add to your journaling, and you can explore these on your own, or even explore them in your breakout councils, which we will get to a little bit later. But first, I want to, because Jim is with us here, the author of Truth Presence tonight, I want to invite you guys to be able to ask any questions that you may have with Jim here that maybe he can speak to directly. So are there any other challenges you're experiencing or would like to ask about for Jim's response? So if anybody has a questions for Jim who's here, please, now's a great time.
I have a question about the app, Jim. After using it for several weeks, I find I don't want to go through the preparatory part where the female voice is talking. I just would like to go right into it. And it seems like you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And I find that there's a hindrance to getting me into the deeper place by just saying, oh, I'm just waiting for this to stop talking. So have you had people experience that? Have you experienced that? What would you recommend?
Yes. The reason for the introduction in the app is that, unfortunately, so many times when we're meditating, okay, we kind of get mechanical about meditating, and we may get a response, we may not get a response. The introduction walks us through as we become more deeply present. Everything that we talk about in that introduction is what we actually experience personally as we become still. And by doing it here's what I say to myself, okay? Because the first 20 years of meditation, I didn't use an app, or 22 years. But what I realized was, if the introduction feels uncomfortable, usually it's because our ego wants to take us out of the present moment. Because listening to what the introduction says is, again, what we experience as we do it, and doing it, just like some of the men tonight were talking about, you know, their experience of actually doing the morning practice. And one thing I can say, if you have an issue with sort of your mind, too many thoughts going into your mind, breathe a little deeper. And what it does, as we breathe deeper, what happens to us is that it makes it much easier for us to focus on our breath. And once we feel that, and the space has to be very minimal. And once we realize that we are causing ourselves to be more still as we breathe deeper, it makes a difference in the outcome of the meditation. It's almost like what stillness does to us. If you wanted to say, it frees us from what feeds our negative. It frees us from what feeds our negativity, our inner negativity. And the deeper we get into presence, the more confidence we have of continuing the practice. Like Bill said earlier, that just a few minutes ago, that he seemed to lose the fear he had as he was actually practicing, okay? And that is not something that's unusual. It's absolutely normal as you become more still for this reason. Fear is always in the future. We cannot manage a future fiction now. It's not real. So the introduction, the method of how we breathe is essential to becoming deeper in the practice of presence. And eventually, as I say over and over again, it becomes an effortless practice, because not only in the morning practice, but the hourly reminder, there's always a sense of relief, of renewal. And at times there's a deep sense of peace. Now, the only way we're going to have confidence in it is by doing it consistently. Not doing it consistently, it's like I tell people, it's not that it doesn't work. It's not that it's that I'm not doing the work to allow it to work. And creating space is the only way we can allow it to work.
Thank you, Jim. Dominic, does anybody else have a question for Jim? Jim Erickson, please go ahead.
Maybe I'm putting too much into it, I'm not sure, but when I take my breaths, sometimes I feel pain when I'm trying to expand my lungs. And I don't know if that's normal, if I'm overdoing it, but maybe it's my age, I'm not sure, but it seems like there's some pain that's involved. I don't know if that's natural, both as I inhale and also as I exhale.
No, that's not an issue that I know of. But I might say this: just do it slower breaths, slower deep in breath, and a slower out breath. Just make it longer and slower. But you certainly don't want to do it to the point where you're having an issue with discomfort. That's not going to help you.
Okay.
So you're not going to make you more present. It's going to make you more worried.
Well, Jim, I appreciate Jim Erickson. I appreciate you bringing that up as well. And I would just maybe tag on Jim's answer and just say, yeah, obviously you don't want to do anything that causes you pain. But I will say from my own personal experience, when I've started to breathe, I realize how shallow my breathing usually is, and now how frequently I'm not breathing to the full capacity. And sometimes when I do take deeper inhales, it takes a while again for me to be able to get that with, my muscles are tight and that sort of thing. And so the deeper I inhale, I can definitely feel some physical discomfort sometimes if I've been breathing really shallowly. And that's something that I've noticed over the years as well. So I don't know, but I'll offer that as well. Just maybe some practice. Yeah, take those deep breaths. Michael, Mike Grom, did you have a question?
So, Jim, if you could address the blending of intention with the focus on the breath. It's almost like, if I'm using a sacred word, Yahweh, or then my mind is on the sacred word, not on my breath. And so, I don't know, just if you can speak to that how does that blend together in this practice?
Okay. Let's say Yahweh, Jesus, or what I say a lot myself is, Father, I put my trust in you. Now, at times, I may say that, or Jesus, I put my trust in you, or both of them, 10 times, 12 times. But this is what's so important. When we're breathing, a slow in breath, a long out breath. What I noticed years ago was what prevents or lessens a clear before and after is that we're stopping too soon. Like, say, as you do your practices, as you said earlier, try doing longer slow breath, longer out breath, but just focus on that breath and say, Father, I put my trust in you. And do it longer than you normally do it. When you get to a level of stillness, it's like you don't want to stop breathing, because it truly is, as God promised us, as Jesus promised us, a peace you cannot find in this world. But if we stop too soon, we're not going to have inner confidence in it. And that's kind of the, and the other is, when we're not able to stop our mind from running, which I've been doing this 25 years. 95% of the time over those 25 years, if I have that issue, it's always, I'm breathing and I'm thinking. But once you stop and once you experience, and look, all of us have experienced a clear before and after in our prayer life, in our life. Anytime that we give unconditional love to another person or receive unconditional love from another person, we know what that feels like. Everyone here that on this meeting tonight, they know what that feels like. That is stillness. As I say, you can say, well, when I'm at this location, I feel peace. Okay, when I'm doing this activity with family or children or grandchildren, yeah, I just feel so full of peace and contentment. But it's never the location or the person you're with. It's that they made it easier for you or me to become still. And once you do it long enough where you become still, you will come back over and over again, because then you have the inner spiritual confidence. So we talk about stillness, but it always leads back to inner spiritual conditioning, doing it consistently enough to where you have confidence that you have access to God's spiritual being throughout the day, 24 hours a day. And that's not me saying that. That's God saying that. Be still and know that I am God. And I've said this before. That is the most direct command God has given us. And it is the most profound experience that we can have if we actually do what God told us, be still and know that I am God. That is the gateway to spirit, which is the gateway to an intimate experience with God's spiritual being. Just don't stop too soon, and breathe slow. Focus on your breath and say, Father, I place my trust in you, because, we're men. We don't like saying we can't do it. We don't like saying, I want to do it myself. Okay? No, we can't do this ourselves. That's why it humbles us. But if we don't remind ourselves that we're not doing it and it's being done to us, we're not going to humble ourselves. And if we don't humble ourselves, how can God change us?
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, brothers, too. I'd like to continue this questioning, but we do also want to make sure that we have some time to break into our council groups this evening. So I think at this point we'll continue on, but I do want to continue to invite your questions, sharing your experiences with us. Again, you can reach myself, Chester, and Jim using the email answers@choosingpresence.org. And again, also you can journal about these things, but share with us what's going on with your practice. Where are you finding resistance? What would be helpful if we could provide you some more insight or some response? What will be helpful, essentially? With that, I want to move on just to bring up what every time I read this book, something else or something more stands out to me. And this time, as I read through chapter 6 about resistance, one of the things that stood out very clearly to me was Jim cites the author and practitioner of Ignatian spirituality, Vanita Hampton Wright. She talks about 4 ways that we resist, and I'm going to share those with you and invite Jim to comment if you'd like to on this. The first way that we resist, letting go of old ways of coping with our problems can feel like failure. So by letting go of our old ways of coping with our problems, it sometimes feels like a failure. Number 2, if we give up our existing ways of behaving and coping, if through the practice of presence we drop our judgments about who we are or aren't, what then? Your identity gets wrapped up in the ways you behave and cope with things, and you don't want to let that go, that identity go. Number 3, we become too comfortable and secure in what we know, and therefore we resist growing. I think that's a thing that we can definitely identify others doing, and we also do that ourselves. We become secure in what we know and don't want to venture outside of that. And number 4, to practice presence means we have to face reality, to look at our problems for what they are, and most of us would rather deny those problems exist. When you awaken to presence, you have to awaken to the reality of your life. And for a lot of us, we can probably identify times when that has caused us to face things that we wouldn't otherwise want to face. Jim, do you want to add any perspective on these 4 ways?
Yeah, I would see, as we become still, present, the question we have to ask ourselves is, well, how do we have the strength to stop the inner fears and conflicts? There has to be a contrast. When we say a clear before and after, that's exactly what it is. The contrast is what was going on inside of me in an unconscious state, and what changes as I become more still. And don't forget, what we're talking about is a step into the unknown for just about all of us. And any step into the unknown is going to raise fears within us. And those fears cannot be overcome by us individually. It can only be overcome by union with God's spiritual being. That's the unknown. That's the step into the unknown. We are giving up our insecure and fear-filled ego. We're giving up our resistance to being hurt, to being diminished, to being alone and isolated. And we're saying, okay, I'm scared to death, but I got to do this. Who's going to give us that strength? It's not going to come from us. So when people tell me sometimes, well, I have an issue, I'm busy and I got a lot of busy and I can't do this hourly practice and I can't do the morning practice. I said, wait a second. Let me remind you of something. Or someone say it's too hard. I says, no, it's not too hard. This is what's hard. Waking up in the morning and your head is going 1,000 thoughts a minute, thought after thought after thought. And 80% of them are all negative. Okay. And you're worried about something that did happen or worried about something that might happen. And during the day, we're alone with ourselves. And all of a sudden, a thought comes into our head. And within a minute or two, we're in a state of deep anxiety. And we can't stop thinking. Or we go to bed and we can't go to sleep because our mind won't let us go to sleep. Or we wake up because our mind is running with thoughts. That's hard. Every time we breathe, guess what? There is no anxiety. There is no worry. There is no fear. There is no lack of self-esteem. But we have to do it consistently enough to allow God to change us from the inside. That is the power. In my life, as I said this before, they say you could have 5,000 or 50,000 thoughts. Before 25 years ago, I had 150,000 thoughts. There was never a second my mind wasn't running 100 miles an hour. And for some short period of time, it actually worked until it caved in and just stopped working. And I realized I don't know anything. What I thought I was successful in has brought me nothing but misery. So what am I going to do? And since I'm a kid, I was a gang leader in Brooklyn. In Vietnam, I was a leader. I had my own business for all these years. And then to come, all of a sudden, I'm 50 years old, and I say to myself, holy shit, I'm a total failure. And that's how I felt. After IMROP, I said, most guys said, wow, that was a great experience. I said, holy shit, I got it all wrong. What am I going to do? Then I said, I know the things you have to do to be successful. Now my choice was 25 years ago, I got to do the work. I have to do the work. And I've been doing it for 25 years. The best decision I ever made. And when I say to you, to be able to stand here and tell you any negative thing about my life, anything that made me guilty or ashamed of, that doesn't bother me because I know God forgives me. Like St. Augustine said, the grace that the Holy Spirit puts into our hearts is itself the forgiveness of sin. But if I didn't allow God to give me that strength through stillness, I'd be back where I was 25 years ago. Now, if I stop practicing in a very short period of time, I'll be right back there too, in my head. Hey, all I can say is this: put your trust in God.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Jim. That was really nice. The passion that you have for this practice is infectious, and what you described too, I think a lot of us can relate to as men, and our own journeys, our own spiritual journeys as well. I know that everybody that's here with us did not just drop into this workshop just off the street. You guys have been on a journey for a long time, and we really hope that this practice helps expand that journey, and we'll be with you throughout the rest of your life on your spiritual journey. So with that, I'm going to invite Chester to read the Making Meaning of the Message for chapter 6.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Resistance is one of the biggest obstacles to our peace of mind and to practicing presence. When we resist what is, we are accepting a false reality that we have created in our ego mind. As we practice presence, that becomes very clear to us. What we resist has power over us, but what we accept in non-resistance no longer has power over us. Non-resistance and acceptance free us from the inside So we are experiencing our true life now rather than reacting negatively to our life situations. All the things happening around our life and our relationships, in the work we do, financial worries, our security, our inner well-being. Then we have the confidence to deal with them all. But when we dwell on them or obsess over them again and again in resistance, we have taken ourselves out of reality. All the things in our life situation, they come and they go. They're not permanent. Our life is permanent, eternal, and it is whole, complete, and accessible always. In the practice of presence, we have an alternative, a contrast. Are we going to create our inner fears and conflicts or accept the peace of the present moment? Nothing in our life situation is as powerful as that peace. And Jim spoke to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Chester. And brothers, we're going to do some breakouts, and I hope you'll indulge us this evening. Maybe we'll go a little bit past the 9:30 Eastern time that we usually like to close on. We felt like it was important, especially as we hit this week 6 and we hit the resistance chapters, for you guys to be able to check in with your experience with the practice so far, and to be able to ask some questions. So, thank you for bearing with us a little bit tonight, but we do want you to get out into your breakout councils at least once more. And before we do that, we'll get into councils for about 15 minutes. So it'll be a little bit short this evening, but I'm going to invite Chester to offer the 4 intentions of council. And then Jim has a little bit of message about journaling, about the importance of journaling.
Yeah, and then looking at, Brian's going to put up the prompts, and we'll have 4 prompts. And, just given the shortness of time, maybe you look at the 4 and pick the one that really resonates with you, because we're not going to have enough time to get through all of them. So, as I've spoken to before, right, the 4 intentions of counsel: listen from the heart, speak from the heart, be spontaneous and authentic. So don't think ahead on what your answer is going to be. And especially this evening, be lean of expression. And then Jim, if you could talk about, I know you've mentioned journaling before, if you could talk a little bit about more journaling, because I've mentioned that before myself, but while you're on, if you wanted to talk about your importance, what you think the importance of journaling is.
Yeah, journaling is really essential for this reason. Let's say we're in it 4 or 5 weeks now, 6 weeks. As you journal, and you may think, well, I'm not sure if this has really helped me a lot. If you're journaling, go back to your first answers, and now think about those answers you gave. I guarantee you'll say, yeah, maybe this is helping me more than I thought it was. I give you an example. See, it's not like we start practicing presence. Now, sometimes we can start practicing presence, and the first 2 times you do it, it's like, wow, this is great. But that's not the norm. But as we practice presence consistently, we start noticing subtle things. An example, me, I always had what I call, when I was younger, anxiety spikes. I'm successful. I have a beautiful family, a wife, 4 children, good business. And I could be alone with myself or with people. And all of a sudden I get this, boom, something's going to go wrong. And I couldn't stop my mind from thinking about what could go wrong, right? Or I'm with 10 people and I feel alone and isolated because I'm in my head, okay? But all of a sudden, I can remember back 25 years when I started. All of a sudden, I don't know, a month, 3 months go by. All of a sudden, I'm going, wow, all these anxiety spikes, they hardly never happen all of a sudden, Or if I get angry, 3 months go by. If I get angry, I'm in pain afterward now. How could I get angry at another person? They're connected to me spiritually, and I'm actually in pain. Because that's what it does to us. It is the foundation of all our strength. And the biggest mistake I made in the beginning was I did not make the practice of presence primary in my life. When I made the practice of presence for the first, let's say 3 years, let's say the first next 22 years, I made it as soon as I made it primary in my life, a significant inner turnaround happened because I realized I was not doing it. And those times when, let's say, I'm meditating, and well, you know, nothing was not really happening, I just kept breathing. And guess what? When it happened, boom. Okay, you do that, you're on another level. And all of a sudden, you have the confidence to know, no matter what the circumstances in your life, you can connect with God's spiritual energy. And that energy will stop your fear and transform your pain. Is there anything better than that? Not that I know of. We have to put our trust in God, put our trust in Jesus. Journal.
Yes. Thank you, Jim. So we're going to break into council groups. We have 4 groups here tonight. At least several of you will be in groups that you're not normally in. We ask that someone step up in the group and kind of help lead, facilitate the group. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just open the rooms, and we'll be back in 15 minutes when we'll close up quickly after that. Thank you. All right, welcome back, brothers. It's a real gift for me to co-facilitate this group with you. I love being in council. I love being with you men. It's been wonderful this evening. Thank you so much for your presence here with us. Just want to remind you, we'll be meeting again next week. Chapter 7, please read that a couple times before we get together. Maybe reflect on that. It's called The Courage to Stop Negative Thinking and Gossip. And again, we invite you to continue journaling to the questions. If you go to our website, I've already posted the PDF of journaling questions for Chapter 7 so that you'll have those. And tomorrow, by the end of the day, there will be the video from our time together this evening up there as well. And we have the poem that Chester read posted there as well. And even the 4 ways that we resist, those are all that information is out there for you to share and to explore further. And again, use the Practicing Presence app. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to me. If you need some help or assistance, reach out to me. And that's it for now. Thank you, brothers. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, however you choose to observe it, family, friends, peace.